In this episode, we are going to talk about the power of inertia, how once you get going, it is much easier to continue going. We are also going to do a deeper dive into one of the pillars of the SDE method, mindset, making sure that you guys are implementing protocols for not only that, but all of them. But this episode, we are going to specifically dive into 4 things you can implement for your mindset protocols. But first, if you are receiving value from this podcast, if you're enjoying it, you're applying things on your own, please help us grow the audience. Share this with a friend, share this on social, leave us a quick review. Helps us grow the audience and, give more free tools to those who can create dollar-free changes. Doesn't cost anything. Just ideas, concepts, conversations. So if it's helping you, it's probably going to help somebody else. So don't forget, tag us, share it, leave a review. We appreciate you. That's all we ask.
We got a few great tags last week, I think it was, from you guys listening and doing the SDE method workouts at the same time. So that was cool. And that's something that you do now too. And I usually run and listen to a podcast. I find that I get so much more, I retain so much more out of it. And I feel like it's one of the few times throughout the day where I really can not be distracted and get information out of it. So if you're looking to level up your education, throw a podcast on instead of music while you're lifting.
Lifting, running. Sometimes I do want to just kind of zone out. So if I do a morning run, it's either deep focus on Spotify, and then I can collect my own thoughts, or if I'm in a rut and I need some ideas, it'll be some kind of, usually business, but personal development conversation. Anywho, diving right in. I want to do a quick recap. So the 5 pillars of the SDE method, and we'll kind of dive in specifically to mindset from there. But 5 pillars of health, training, nutrition, mindset, movement, and habits. And one pillar is not any more important than the next. So nutrition is not more important than training. Mindset's not more important than habits. Habits are not more important than movement. They all ebb and flow into each other. They support each other. And then rather than building your entire, whatever you're doing right now, your entire challenge, your entire philosophy for reaching this goal on a deck of cards, on a house of cards, where one gust of wind and everything falls over, when you have all 5 in place, they support each other. So it's a much sturdier foundation. You have a much higher likelihood of achieving success and maintaining that level of success when life throws you a curveball, when stuff gets a little bit crazy, and you can't maintain your training, or you can't maintain your specific diet protocol and your meal prep. And, if you're off for a few days or a week, having everything else in place, first of all, you feel better. Mental health stays on point. You don't feel like you're doing nothing and it's a lost cause, and then you lose all that momentum. So having all these things in place really sets a solid floor to build from.
I think we all are familiar with the popular statistic out there where a lot of people do have great success when it comes to dieting and losing body fat, but most of them, and I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but majority of them are not able to maintain that in the long term. And that's really why we do what we do, because if we want to change things like the obesity epidemic and everything that we have currently going on in this country and in this world, it has to be something that you can sustain for the long haul, forever, for the rest of your life. It's not just what can I do to lose weight or lose body fat as fast as possible, because that's not going to get you anywhere except losing the weight fast and gaining it back just as fast.
If you don't maintain the protocol, you do not maintain the result. And I don't know why this is so difficult to grasp. And people come to us, this is why they come to us for coaching. Either they've seen no results or they can never maintain the results. But think about any practice in life. If you stop doing it, you stop being good at it. So if you stop doing this thing that got you to this result, you don't stay at that result. It's not like riding a bike where you can just pick it up right where you left off. If you stop taking care of your mental health, it will start to suffer. If you stop taking care of your physical health, it will start to suffer. It's very difficult to maintain. So even if you're at a place where you're like, hey, I love where I'm at, I would love to maintain this, you should still be striving for these little improvements. Get a little bit better, get 1% better. Just what can I do to continue to slowly improve, rather than I got to do this crazy diet and this crazy training protocol to get to this elite level. No, you don't need to do that. And that's not something you can balance within life. So we need to make sure we're making positive changes when we're looking for that goal. But once we even get there, what are the things I can continue to do to get a little better each day, to thrive, to feel better, to have more energy, to be able to run around with my kids, all these little things. And that really kind of circles back to the concept of inertia and what we're going to dive into, and kind of the reasoning behind why mindset is so important. Like we were kind of alluding to before, when you get knocked off, if you don't have these other things in place, you lose a lot of momentum. So you lose that inertia that's moving you forward, those strides that you're making. When we can do the little things, when those little things stay in place, when the big things can't be in place, we can continue to make those slow improvements, continue to move forward, to continue to take one step after another towards the goal. So the importance of mindset is that it's the thing that allows us to not get totally derailed, because it starts mentally. You have a bad day, or you're going away on vacation, or you have this busy work trip. You're like, well, I can't do all these things. That sucks. I guess all my goals are going out the window. Obviously, that's a more extreme example as far as your thought process, but it's not uncommon. A lot of people do think that way, and they feel like crap and like, oh, all my gains that I've been working so hard for, they just evaporate. It's not the case, especially if during those stressful periods, you're keeping those little things in place. But just being able to have this mental stronghold of, I know I'm going to be okay. I'm going to control what I can control. And as soon as I get back, I'm going to pick up right where I left off. We need to have that mental capacity to get to that place so we can maintain the physical, mental, spiritual, emotional progress we've been seeing, and not let ourselves get, totally kicked off the rails.
I think the people who have the most success with anything, not just health and fitness, are people who understand that life is constantly changing, whether you like it or not. Your life is always changing. Things come up, whether it's big things like a new job or a move or a new family member or going through a loss, or the little things. You are forever experiencing change day in and day out on some sort of spectrum. So when you are able to identify that and accept that and understand that if the world around you is always changing, there are a lot of things that you can be constant with. And I think that just kind of solidifies your point, is that your mindset is the constant in all of this, and how you approach these changes is the constant. And that alone is what's going to propel you forward and allow you to continue to grow and progress, compared to somebody who just either doesn't understand that life is always changing, or refuses to accept that life is always changing. They're comfortable where life is at. So when something happens, it's like a bigger to-do than anyone else can even fathom.
I believe I got this from one of the books by Thich Nhat Hanh, one of the several books I've read on Buddhism. But basically, he was telling a story about a man who was in jail. I don't know if it was rightfully so or not. I don't remember the actual intricacies of the story. But essentially, he did not lose his freedom because he still had his mind. So as long as you are not in control of my mind, I have my freedom. And that's something that you can take with the political nonsense that's going on nowadays, the specific climate that we're living in. But also just for what we were just talking about, I feel like everything's chaos. I can't control anything. My life is busy. I've got the kids. I've got no time. If you continue to control your mind, if you continue to have that, again, that mental stronghold, that is your base for everything else, you won't be as derailed. You will be able to stay on point with the little things. You have no time? Okay, you have to eat, don't you? Every day we eat. Can you control that? Can you control how you're moving your body? So if you're at work and you get up every once in a while, don't tell me you're chained to your desk, because you can get up for a minute, do a couple laps around the office, come back. Little things like that. When your mind is in a good place to build from, everything else feels easier. Even though it may not be easy, it's going to feel easier. You're not going to be as derailed, like I keep saying. Second point I want to make real quick on that concept. When life gets really nuts, it is pretty common to start something without finishing it. And I forget where I heard this part as well, but I'm going to throw it at you anyway. Our neural wiring does adapt to completing a project or leaving these things unfinished. So I can relate to this personally, more specifically with our business endeavors. I get really excited about certain things and I run in a direction, and sometimes they aren't always seen to fruition on my end. So I might pass the baton. So it's a lot of start, stop on my end. But when we complete a project, when we complete something, even if it's something out in the yard, another thing I can relate to, start 10 projects, finish 3 of them, circle back to the next 7. When we complete something, we establish this capacity in our brains to continue completing things. If we stop completing things, we establish this precedent where we're going to start and stop, start and stop, start and stop. And there are essentially these, random if you call it neurological pathways or wirings, whatever you want to call it, that kind of look a little split up versus this one continuous railroad track that's a much smoother pattern. So with that in mind as well, obviously when we can start and complete something, even if there's a hiccup in between, because we have the mental fortitude to see it through to the end, that is going to give us such a monumental boost of momentum, that continued inertia to do more and more things in the positive regard. So even we talk about habits a lot on our discovery calls. So to that same extent, habits are the little things we can do throughout each day that lead to a goal over time. And as we establish quality habits and we're consistent with those habits, even the non-habit decisions we're making throughout the day start to improve significantly. So those are the little things we're talking about. You have certain things you're going to measure, and you also have certain things that are going to happen subliminally. Subliminally? Is that the right word?
Sounds good.
Subconsciously. We'll throw that in there too. Just little things that you're doing because you've been making positive decisions. You've been having positive impacts. You're going to continue to make more positive decisions, whether you realize it or not. Rather than going to the pizza place for lunch, you might run out and grab a salad with some protein and yada, yada, yada. Basic example, but I digress. So today I want to give you 4 specific things, very simple, very, very simple things you can start with when it comes to establishing a mindset protocol. Because I know we talk about the SDE method a lot. Some of you may be really honing in on the training and nutrition component.
Most of you probably
are. But I cannot stress this enough. We started the episode with this. I'm going to bring it back now. All 5 are just as important as the next. They ebb and flow into each other. You cannot skip these. If you want to focus on optimal health and you truly want to feel the benefits of that,
in the long term,
it can't just be thinking of these 5 or being aware of these 5. You need a specific protocol for training, for nutrition, for mindset, for movement, for habits. Some of those overlap. So you guys might be saying, okay, where's sleep? It's in a habit. It's your sleep hygiene, your routine. You're going to bed at the same time, waking up at the same time. Those are things we'll talk about, and we do talk about all the time. But 4 basic things we can dive right into for mindset, and we can kind of let these build off on each other. So number 1, very, very simple, is just focused breathing. It can be a few breaths. It can be a minute. But basically, you might want to set a timer or an alarm throughout the day to kind of bring this up, make you aware of it until you make this a habit. But eventually, as stressful situations arise, we want to make sure that we're noticing that. So this is a big part of meditation, which we'll talk about, but being aware of your current situation, your current surroundings, not living in la la land all day. Sometimes that's good, but you don't want to be there all day. You want to be living in the present moment. You notice that stress come on and we breathe through it. So this is something that I actually am working on with Kai right now. So for those of you who are following on social media, on stories, Kai and I do cold plunges every morning. And at first, I would ask him if he wanted to come outside with me. Like sometimes it's yes, sometimes it's no. But I would bring that up to him. I'd make him aware of what I was doing, and we go out and do it. And I also don't just throw him in the plunge. We have a conversation before every plunge. Hey, buddy, it's going to hurt. It's going to be very cold. You're going to lose your breath. You have to catch it. You have to find your breath. Do you know why we're doing this? No, Daddy, why are we doing it? Because it makes us stronger. Obviously we want to work through adversity, work through these challenges. Hard things make us better. But this specific exercise we're doing, you're going to notice a huge amount of stress. It's going to be very, very difficult. And rather than jump and flail and cry and scream, we're going to catch our breath. We're going to breathe through it and realize we're okay. So we're going to calm things down so that in the real world, when something stressful hits, we're not just going to start throwing fists, and we're not just going to start throwing, these stupid tantrums we see, not only from kids, but from adults and people on TV. We can control it a lot better because we are in control of our emotions. We are in control of our minds, and we can breathe through these stressful situations. I am having this conversation with my 5-year-old. I have been having this conversation with him probably since he could speak.
Definitely.
Have conversations. At 2 years old, we're talking about these things.
Helping him find his breath was probably one of the first things we taught him, like once he could talk, is to take a minute and breathe and sit down and take a few deep breaths. And that still to this day has been something that we intentionally practice with him. And it's at the point now where certain situations he will take a minute and you'll see him do a few deep breaths and he'll take a second to himself without being prompted. And it's just getting to that point now after practicing it for the last 3.5 years. So that is a great example of, number one, there's no age limit to any of this. And number two, you can't ever get to the point where you're like, okay, I did this for 6 weeks and I'm good. Like, we're talking years here.
If you stop maintaining the practice, you stop maintaining the benefit. So I'm not going to toot our own horn, but I will say to this day, and we have plenty of problems, and our kids are not perfect, plenty of things we're working through. Neither of our kids have ever had a temper tantrum. Not one. Kai's 5 years old. He has never had a temper tantrum. I'm talking flailing, inconsolable, dropping to the ground, crying in the middle of a store. That's never happened. Not in public, not in private. If there's an issue, we stop. Is that okay? No, daddy, that's not okay. Why isn't that okay? He'll tell me why it's not okay. We move on. Sometimes there's timeout. Sometimes there's a longer conversation. He has never had a temper tantrum.
Nope.
Again, plenty of problems, plenty of things we're working through. Nobody's perfect. That is one thing I'm extremely proud of. Mm-hmm. And that comes back to the things we have been doing since he could communicate with us and understand why we're doing those things. So first thing, focused breathing. Again, a few breaths, it can be a minute, but basically you're just quieting your thoughts. You're focusing all the way in, all the way out. If you're breathing, through your nose, you could be thinking about feeling the air coming in and tip of your nose and all the way out. Close your eyes if you want to. Not necessary, but you can. And the point is to bring you back to the present moment, away from whatever stressors are elevating your heart rate, reminding you you're alive, you're safe, you're here, and you will figure out a remedy to whatever it is in front of you. You're going to figure it out. You just got to take a step back from that emotion, recognize the emotion, and then move forward. So
a lot of you work very stressful jobs too, and I feel like this is a perfect practice you can implement at work. If you're talking with somebody in person, hey, I need a minute here. Walk away, take your deep breaths, and come back to the conversation. If you open an email that makes you feel all the things Josh just explained, same thing. Take a second to yourself, breathe, and then respond. And there really is no negative outcome from doing that I can think of.
So the next level to this is going to be what we call box breathing. Box breathing, because there's 4 sides to a box and there's 4 parts to this breathing exercise. So inhale, pause, exhale, pause, typically 3 to 8 seconds. So you pick a number. So if you're brand new to this, start with 3, start with 4 seconds. 4-second inhale, hold 4 seconds, 4-second exhale, hold for 4 seconds, and then do that for 3 to 5 minutes or so. So you're going to build upon that. And what you're allowing for there is your parasympathetic nervous system to take over. You're going to feel an immediate sense of calm when you finish that. That's something that's a bit more powerful than the focused breathing, where focused breathing, you are focused more mentally on coming back to the moment, away from that stressor. Box breathing, you are actually activating your parasympathetic nervous system. Anything you want to add there?
No.
Okay. Number 3. And this is going to be a bit more advanced than just the breathing exercises, and that's going to be meditation. So the concept is similar. We are still aiming to minimize our thoughts. We're going to strategically focus on our breath or sounds around us. You can go through a body scan. It is a common misconception that you can't become distracted during meditation, or else you quote unquote failed, but you really can. So meditation is something you could do in a construction zone. The point is to simply be aware. You can hear the hammer, you can hear the saw, you can hear the guy yelling for another block of wood, whatever is going on there. If a thought crosses your mind, that's fine. You can acknowledge it, you can let it go. But the point again is to come back to that present moment. So there's a couple different ways you can do this too. In one of the books, and one of the kind of concepts as far as explaining it is spotlight and floodlight. So spotlight would be like focusing on the tip of your nose as you're breathing, feeling the air coming in and out. Floodlight is being aware of everything around you. So in that construction zone, what are all the sounds you're hearing? Are you feeling the vibrations? How warm is it? Is it cold out? Is the wind blowing? That's floodlight. You're aware of everything around you. Spotlight, one thing, one focus. That could be a body scan. It could be your breathing. So feeling your nose, body scan, starting with the tip of your toe, working yourself up to the top of your head, every part of your body. Try to actually feel it. Focus on it that hard that you can feel it even though you're not moving. And again, recognize that thoughts are going to come. People will say expert meditators, they may still have a thought every 7 seconds. If you can get 7 seconds without a thought, you're probably pretty damn good. So you're not going minutes. You're not going the entire time. You're not going hours without thinking. Something pops into your head. You acknowledge it. You don't let that run away and become this full-blown story as you're going through the meditation. You see it, you acknowledge it, and you kind of shake it off. It goes away. In one ear, out the other. Let it kind of float on through. And this is really like all of these things are building upon it, but you get to meditation and the main thing you're focused on implementing and harnessing and harvesting is mindfulness, living in the present moment, which so many of us don't do. And that's a big reason why certain stress levels get to certain levels. Like getting that high all the time is we live less and less and less in that present moment. So having a practice actually bring that back is a huge, huge part of this.
Yeah. And another, I guess, example of this, I don't know if you would technically call this meditation or if it's more mindfulness, but my therapist actually was the one who told me about this method, and I forget if it has an actual name, but you take the 5 senses and wherever you're at in that moment, you name something that coincides with the 5 senses. So obviously look at something in the room that you're in and identify, I'm looking at this picture of this lion on the wall. That would be sight. What are you smelling right now? Take a minute to smell whatever the smells are around you in the present moment. Touch. What is your body touching at this moment? So it really just allows you to play on your 5 senses and bring you to the present moment right now. But that was just another, I thought, helpful tool for those who may struggle with like just sitting and starting to meditate or starting to be more mindful and need more of like an action plan. I think that's just kind of helpful for those people who feel like they're not good at meditation, which is probably 99.9% of the people who say, I could never meditate.
It's me saying I'm not flexible. It's because I don't stretch. I get into spurts. I do it and I stop and I do it and I stop. Start with a minute. Meditate for a minute. Build that up a minute each week. So every single day for a minute, next week every single day for 2 minutes, build it up to 10. You don't have to go beyond 10. You're going to notice benefits at 10. Your brain is physically going to change at 10. You want to bump that up to 10, 15, 20, great. But you can stop at 10 and it's going to be great. And then lastly, and it's my favorite protocol for mindset. Most people probably don't think of it as a mindset protocol, but it's cold exposure. And to be clear, like for those of you who see me doing it, posting about it, I hate being cold. Like I'm not doing it to burn fat. I'm not doing it because it's this amazing recovery tool. I'm doing it literally because I hate it. And I started doing this
2021.
3-4 years ago.
2021.
Because I thought, like, what is the one thing I hate doing that I could practice to make everything else easier? And like, I hate being cold. I saw a couple cold plunge videos. I'm like, I could try that. That seems really, really shitty. Let me do that. And everything else I have throughout my day gets easier. And that's where it started. And then obviously it became even more mainstream. I don't really think it was when I started. It was starting. It was starting to climb, which is why I saw it probably.
Way more trendy, if you will, now.
Yeah, for sure. So I started it for that. And then as more came out, oh, it's good for this, it's good for that, it's good for this, it's good for that. Cool. Those are side benefits. I'm literally doing this because I hate it. So number one priority for me is mental resilience, let alone priority number 2, which has been great, improving my mood. So when you do the cold exposure, it's a ridiculous bump, something like 250% in dopamine for hours after you do it. It's even higher if you do it fasted. So first thing in the morning, it's even higher if you do that fasted with caffeine. And it lasts really long. It's not this huge spike and then this immediate plummet where you feel terrible afterwards. And it's not like, you get your drip of dopamine from scrolling. It's not one of those things. It's something you worked for. It was very difficult and you got the hit of dopamine because you worked. You went through that difficult thing to achieve it. So your body says, yes, this is good. You worked hard. You achieved a benefit, a result. Let's do this again. You get the nice you get a nice significant dose of dopamine. So,
and I can attest that when we stopped plunging for a little bit because we didn't have one, maybe you were doing the cold showers, maybe you weren't, I don't know. But there was a significant change in your mood during those few weeks or months or whatever it was, where I noticed a difference. I know you noticed a difference too, which is why we got the new plunge set up.
Why we got the chest freezer.
But it's just interesting to see that aspect of it and see how, not that you were like the worst person ever, but you could tell your mood was just off.
Yeah, and that was also a period where I was scaling back training. So prior to cold plunges or cold exposure, if it was a shower for a little bit, I would have a very hard time if I didn't train that day. Like that was my relief and my release. Running, lifting, whatever it was. So right before we got the chest freezer, I think that's when I dropped down to about 4 days a week because we've had so much going on with business. Literally like 3 or 4 projects continuing to roll, and I'm organizing and delegating like way too much to even take an hour a day to get my lifts in. So I scaled back to 4. I was still doing the cold showers, but they weren't cold enough anymore. The best I had felt, like specifically from cold exposure, was literally in the middle of the winter when I was chiseling off the ice every morning at 5 o'clock in the morning, 34 degrees below the frozen tundra there. And I was in there for a minute and it sucked, but I got out and it was fucking freezing. But it felt great mentally. Like I had this high that lasted for a long time. So when I scaled back training and I was just doing the showers, it wasn't enough. I had a friend recently argue with me that, you know, you don't have to get that cold. You can do it at a much higher temperature. I'm like, I'm not disagreeing with you, but I don't want to be in a bucket of moderately cold water for 45 minutes. So I take a 5-minute shower. It was doing nothing for me at that point. So I'm like, I need this. I need something I can just jump in, get my 2 minutes, 3 minutes, whatever it is, and jump out. So with this, I'm like, this is something I absolutely needed. It's something we didn't want to spend money on at the time, but I'm like, everything else is suffering because of where I'm at right now. So this is an investment that I need in my mental health. So we got this bad boy, started off at 45, I think we set it at. So it's a chest freezer. If you guys haven't seen the video, I do have it on my YouTube channel, but a chest freezer, I spray painted it black so it looks badass. And then I have a digital, it's a thermometer that actually turns on and off outlets, either heating outlets or cooling outlets based on the temperature it's measuring. So this little cord goes into the cold plunge. You set it for whatever. And then if it gets above that temperature you can set intervals. So I have it set for 2 degrees. So if I have it set at 37 right now and it gets to 39.1, it kicks back on, drops it down to 37. So we've got that. And then I have an aquarium filter that filters the water and has a UV light in there to kill some bacteria as well. But we dropped that down to 45 the first week. The next week it was like 43, then 40, and then we're down to 47 right now. 37 right now. I'm doing 2 minutes there. And it's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful.
If our 5-year-old can do, what does he do, 10 seconds?
10 seconds. And he's standing, so he's not all the way in there. He's just standing. It's probably just below his waist. He's in there for 10 seconds, catches his breath, pull him out.
Let him be your influence of the day. But I agree. It definitely is something that we both love. I'm not doing it right now because this comes out tomorrow. So yesterday, if you missed my post, go look at my Instagram. But there's a reason why I'm not doing it at this moment. But yeah, I mean, through all seasons of our life, it has added so much value since 2021 when we started doing it at my parents' house. So it's not a trendy thing for us. We're years deep in it, and it's continued to be something that continues to add value in many ways.
Every single day. So you don't have to do all those things. Pick one. Start with focused breathing. And again, do this stuff with your kids. Like all of these really, depending on your
Don't
threshold.
force them, but let them see you do it. And I guarantee you, if they see you doing it, they're going to want to do it.
And even if they're not doing it, have the conversation. Tell them why you're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then if, your kids are struggling with behavior issues, literally teach them how to focus on their breath for 5 seconds. Hey, I know you're upset. Let's catch your breath for a second. Can you feel your breathing? Take a deep breath. Exhale nice and slow. Take a deep breath. Exhale nice and slow. So if they're focusing on their breath, if you can really teach them to slow down that exhale and they're activating their parasympathetic nervous system, they're calming down physically, physiologically. It's something that's actually happening. It's not just mentally I'm slowing down. It's going to be both. It's a game changer. These are the things, all 5 pillars. 5 pillars of health. They're for you. They're for your family. They're for you to set the example, to show them how to handle themselves, how to take care of themselves. And if you have these habits set up when they're young,
makes it that much easier for them.
It's a game changer.
It's normal. They're normal.
All right, guys, there you have it. Those are our 4 suggestions. And there's obviously 1,000 more, but 4 simple suggestions for what you can implement in your mindset protocol. Again, every single pillar: training, nutrition, mindset, movement, habit. Training, nutrition, mindset, movement, habits. Implement something. It doesn't have to be a huge thing. If it's focused breathing for 3 breaths, there's your mindset.